It's grey, it's overcast, it's early in the afternoon, so we've lost half the day already, but our silage price has finally stabilised and we are ready to try again. Hello again, I am Jim Bob and welcome back to Big Bud Farm. We are going to attempt to sell our silage again. As you can see, the price has balanced itself back out again. It's been climbing all morning and it's finally stabilised at $274 per 1,000 litres. So we need to kind of get everything back up and running again. I'm just checking the positioning of stuff. I've got a little bit of chaff on this belt that needs to be removed. So let's try and dump that wherever I can. Made a bit of a mess of this. Well, there we go. It's gone. Wherever it was, it has now gone. So let's get this belt repositioned. I'm just going to push this one out the way. Once the big red belt is in the right position, then we can go ahead and reposition the yellow belt. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Yep, that'll do absolutely fine. So I'm going to turn the wheels around and turn the engine off. Let's reposition this feeder belt here. There we go. Now we need to kind of kick the ball rolling again, so let me start by making sure we've got a steady supply, which means getting these belts active again. These ones at the back we're going to leave alone for now. We're going to work on these ones first of all. So I need to position these forward like that. And what you'll notice as well is, as we come along here, you can see that the belts that we had along the side were already starting to take from this bunker here. So that's why we have this kind of gap here, this bit where it's falling away. That's because it was being pulled through this wall, through this bunker, and through this wall by the belts that we had down here. They're all now moved out of the way. I want to continue working on this section first. Already you can see we're getting this little groove appear here, and we're seeing perhaps a little bit more coming out from around the back as well. There you can definitely see it, look, you know, just visually fell in front of us. So this is working very, very nicely indeed. These ones we're going to leave till last, but I am going to position this belt here back over the end of this conveyor. And it doesn't seem to want to drop for some reason. Why is that? It might be because this belt is too close. Yeah, there we go. You can see, as soon as I moved that belt out of the way, this one immediately started up, which is exactly what I want. So now we have our nice constant supply of silage. That's actually slightly wonky, which is a bit of a worry. Let's give it a little reposition if I can. Fine, there we go, that's the right control. Let's line that back up a little bit more. So we have a nice, good, steady stream of silage. You can see we're getting some lag because of all these belts and all this moving silage. It's creating just a little bit of a frame rate stutter. But that's all going through into the shredder. Up to 9,000 litres being processed at the moment. So now it's time to move this bit here. You can see where I've been trying to clean the bits of chaff away from the edges at the front. Some of those are a bit stuck and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get those out. Probably going to have to try and do some serious tinkering with a roller or something. I don't know. Got to try and figure out exactly how I'm going to get those perfectly clear. I did really massively kind of overfill those bunkers and it looks as though it has caused a couple of issues. We'll get the bits that I've gathered up. We'll get those processed through here as well. And once we have enough of a gap, we can actually then start to sell everything else. Yeah, once we have enough, distance on that first trough, then I can start positioning some belts in and really working the next section. So there we go, that's that repositioned. That's all feeding in very nicely. That's still running. Hop the wall. And you can see that the belt is starting to stutter a little bit because we're now getting a lot of silage moving through it, and it can only process so much on this belt. I mean, obviously it's fine because it's still running and we're still getting a constant feed rate. You can see that the money is ticking up at a constant rate rather than a little stutter here, a little stutter there. When it starts to do that, it means the processor itself is full, and we have to kind of speed time up a bit to let it empty itself out a bit before we slow it down and continue to fill it up again. But it's because a belt can only process so much silage at once. So you can see that we have this first belt here that can only take a maximum amount of silage at any one time, and it's now got silage coming in from the front directly onto it, which is slowing down how much this can deposit onto it. And this has 1, 2, 3 sources of silage all feeding onto it, so that's why it looks like it's juddering and stuttering a little bit. You can see that this belt is moving at a constant speed pretty much. These belts are juddering a little bit because there's 3 different sets of silage all converging on a single belt. That's why we have a little bit of a stutter there. But everything else seems to be working really, really nicely so far. And I think we're getting close to actually being able to start putting belts in this section here, which is what I've been waiting for. So I'm actually going to start setting that up. What I want is to be able to drag silage through from a section at a time. So I need to clear this front section here and then have another belt in there. And once that's clear, we can then move on to the next one. So this belt will pull through from this area here and potentially a little bit from here as well, and then that should deposit it automatically onto the ground here, which will then get picked up by this belt and deposited onto that ramp there. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we can only process so much silage per belt at any one time. So if we do too much, then we're not going to be able to actually keep the flow continuous. We're not going to be able to unload these sections fast enough. So this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. So you can see here, if I start to unload this, it's only going to unload for a certain period of time. This one is now picking it up, as you can see, and depositing it on there. But there runs a risk that this will build up too much and then it will cut off this belt. And if that happens, you know, while we're trying to do this technique, then we end up breaking our chain and crashing the market again. So this is going to be tricky to manage. It's okay at the moment because we don't have too many feeds on this belt here, and this is feeding in at a pretty high point, so we can kind of get away with it. But you see it is pausing every now and again, so this is something we need to be very, very wary of. If we overfeed the belt, then this will stop picking up because it's not, you know, this area won't be getting cleared away enough, which means this belt will have nowhere to unload, so it will automatically switch itself off and stop unloading. Which then, if that was our only real main source of silage being fed through, would then break the supply completely being fed into the conveyor system and would crash the market price. So this is why we can't do it all the way down. We can't do it all the way down the bunker. We have to do it stage at a time. So this stage first, then when this area is cleared, we'll then move to that stage, then that stage, then that stage, and so on and so forth, to pull through from each of these bunkers. It's going to be tricky, and I'm hoping that we can keep it going. But this is why I have feed piles at either end as well, so that I can actually pile up a load of silage here for when we start making the transition from this part to this part, because it won't just be one belt we'll need to reposition. It'll be a belt that needs to be repositioned down here, a belt that needs to be repositioned in here, and then eventually a belt in there, and then a belt in there, and so on and so forth. All the way down the entire bunkers we'll have to move in stages and position multiple belts all at once. So if we can't keep the supply going while we're making those transitions, again, we break the supply, we break the feed, we crash the market price. Right, I hope that all makes sense. It does in my head. I don't know how well it's coming out and translating, but that's essentially, you know, the plan. So you can see, still 274. We haven't had a single break in supply yet, despite the fact that we've sold quite a bit of silage. And oh, and if you're wondering why the money is looking quite high, I did actually do a contract job while I was working away. You know, obviously these are fully fertilized, as you can see. We're waiting for them to grow, and what I did was I went in and I did a contract harvest here on field 2, which got me around about four to 500,000, I think it was, in payment. That field now needs ploughing, and I think it needs fertilizing as well. Yes, so I didn't do a fertilizer job. I just did a harvest job. In fact, actually, I think that's my header. Yes, my header is still deposited on there. So I'm going to go quickly grab that header with my combine, which I brought over. There's the trailer. I brought it over and used my Helianthus header instead of the smaller standard corn header that was provided to harvest the sunflowers, which enabled me to do the job a lot faster and get paid a higher initial payment, because I was contracted to do it for using smaller equipment, which would have taken longer, and I got a bigger time bonus as well. So all good. But obviously, yeah, I need to pick up that belt, or pick up that header, and put it back on the trailer, get it all clean and put away. So I'm going to do that, and then once that's done, I'll continue to monitor our silage selling. You can see I'm confident enough that it's starting to sell on its own, and you can see actually the cash has just started to stutter, which means that we now have 50,000 litres inside the shredder. Now this means potentially that the small feed belt that we have at the front of the bunker that's pulling from the second bunker may well stop now. So I will check that when we get back there as well, and if that's the case, then you know, it is what it is. I'll just have to keep restarting it until we've cleared enough silage that we don't have to worry about that too much anymore. So this little setup may seem a little bit extreme, but for the single player, you can see that I've been able to move away from this field, you know, from this area. I've gone over to field 2. I drove all the way up field 2 in a combine to collect a header, took it all the way back down field 2, loaded it onto my header trailer, drove all the way back to the farm, cleaned the header, put the header away, and then came back here, and nothing has stopped. You know, obviously this little area here that we knew would stop has stopped, but this system has still continued to run beautifully and smoothly. So yes, it's a little bit extreme, but it's a way that it allows a single player like myself on console, without the benefit of you know, fancy scripting or mods or courseplay, to actually make a huge silage sale and not even be present for it as well. I can go off and I can do other things, and I can come back and check on it periodically, but yeah, this is running quite smoothly and quite nicely without me. If I accelerate time just to clear that belt, or clear the shredder, you can see that we're now getting a faster flow on our belts again as the shredder starts to empty, which means I can reposition this. There we go. I can start tipping from there again. And there you see, getting a slight build-up of silage because we have lots of belts all feeding in here at the same time. But as the number of belts lessens, so essentially when these two belts here stop pulling through, it'll just be the pile at the back, and it'll just be this belt here that'll be feeding. There'll be nothing at the front unless we need to actually put down a continuation you know, pile. Likewise, we have a continuation pile here at the back, which is slowly being drawn from, and we'll keep adding to those as and when we need to. But essentially it'll be a lot less belts that'll be working, so we'll be able to very effectively sort of deal with all of this silage in the transitional periods, and we'll have more of these set up in different locations. Okay, there we go. That has finished emptying, so we can slow the time down again, and this will now gradually start to fill up until it hits that 50,000 limit again, and then things will slow down again. Now the reason I'm going to keep juggling it like this is it's going to take a little bit longer than just leaving it at ×5 the whole time, but if I leave it at ×5 too long, then there's a chance that the silage price here on the market will just start to naturally decline again, and I want to try and sell as much of it at 274 before that happens, because we've got an awful lot to sell here. In fact, this may not all fit into one episode. It depends how well I can edit it and how long it takes me. But yeah, this is where we are now. So I'm going to shut up for a bit. I'm going to shovel a ton of silage, and you probably won't see me again now for quite some time. We've been making some excellent progress on the bunker. You can see it's looking a little bit shorter on that first bunker, and we've cleared out this section on the second bunker as well. So it's time to drop in the next belt. I'm going to position it right up against the wall and start force unloading, and hopefully we should be able to clear this away as it's being deposited. There's still some that's being picked up on the periphery of the other belt, the first one. So there's still some of this that is being collected as well. So this one might sputter out a couple of times. We'll have to keep restarting it until enough of this bit has been cleared away that it's no longer being connected or or grabbed. But you can see that we are now taking from this pile here. You just saw it twitch a little bit there as a bit, and again there a bit been taken away. So we've got this nice sort of drop here, which is being picked up and then picked up there by the belt on the other side of the wall and feeding in. So that stage of the operation is now into effect. You can see this area is now looking a lot shorter than it was. All of this section's been completely cleared away. We were sort of up here earlier. That's all gone, as you can see. I had to reposition this belt ever so slightly at an angle to try and tag this stuff here, and you can see that this trough has extended now along this section as well. So we're getting close to actually being able to start moving belts down into this section and bring them further down. But I want to at least try and clear out this top section if I can. So everything seems to be running pretty smoothly. You can see we're up to 960,000 now. I was running at regular time, and then I switched to 15 to try and speed things up a bit and clear the belts a bit quicker, and I forgot to turn it off. So it ran like that for about five minutes of real time. So we did jump forward a bit in terms of an hour or two, maybe an hour on the clock that we've kind of lost. But everything is still holding firm price-wise. You can see we're still at $274 per 1,000 litres. So it is all selling at the right rate. I have had to top up this pile on occasion, and you can see we're taking from this section here. Again, what I'd like to do is clear out this section here so I can drop a belt in here and then start taking from here and start taking from here. And then once we switch these belts on here at the back, we'll be able to clear this entire back section, and hopefully, it'll make it much easier to then get in and do the rest of these bits of the bunkers. Try and attack it from both ends. It'll also give us potentially a more stable supply of silage into both ends of the belt, so that if one goes down, we still have a backup supply that's feeding, and it gives us time to react before it breaks the feed completely. So I'm going to carry on doing this, and we'll check in another couple of hours or so, I suppose. Okay, so these belts are starting to become a little bit temperamental. As you can see, we've pretty much cleared away all of this stuff here. This is proving to be a little tricky to pick up, and we've also cleared away pretty much all the thing along there as well that the belt is going to collect. This is also starting to play up a bit. As you can see, we have now cleared away a very large section, but we do have this bit here that doesn't seem to want to get collected. So what I'm going to need to do is try and reposition this belt a little bit more. See if I can actually get it to keep taking. You can see it keeps cutting out. So I need to keep playing with the angle. I think we might even possibly be starting to take from the fourth bunker. Oh, I need to speed time up. There we go. But yeah, you can see we're making a huge sort of impression on this amount of silage here. A large volume has been removed already. So it's time for us to start positioning some additional belts. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky, trying to ease and squeeze these in. Then I'm going to start positioning belts inside this next bunker. Start pulling additional material through the wall so that we actually start getting some backup places. Because there will come a time when it'll stop. You can see we're interrupting by moving over here. We're interrupting the flow of that silage there. We've stopped one belt from tipping. So we'll have to restart that belt in a minute. That'll break the flow on the other belt as well. As you can see, that's stopped. But what I want to try and do is to help clear out that section there that's just sort of lingering. I want to try and clear it like this. I'll try and get both belts active if I can. There we go. So that'll clear out that section. While that's doing that, let's restart these belts again. Again, you see this one running out of material. It is proving to be quite tricky to keep these ones going, so I can see we're going to have potentially a fair few problems with this method. It might not work the way I was planning it to do. In which case, I think I might need to lease some additional belts and have a backup system in place. I'll ponder that. See what I can come up with. It may just be a case if I need to work the excavator a bit more. One thing I have been doing as well, I have found this to be quite useful, is this. It is surprisingly useful as a conveyor belt. If I position this in just the right spot, turn it on, see it's starting to work, and if I start emptying this, you can see that it keeps on grabbing material and automatically just dumping it on the floor. So this actually works as a very kind of effective, maneuverable conveyor belt that will keep generating a very large pile behind it, whereas the belts obviously only generate a very small pile before there's not enough space for them to unload. This thing, because it has such a big, wide bucket in comparison to the belt, and also goes so much higher, can tip a lot more and dump it in space. So you can see, just need to keep repositioning it ever so slightly to make sure that you're feeding in at the front, but we're building up a very big pile and very quickly just chewing up this. So I might use this at this end and then keep the excavator down there to keep the backup pile running nice and smoothly. I've now got all three bunkers feeding from that final end bunker there. You can see it's starting to take away. Transfer process seems to be holding up reasonably well. What I've also done is stuck this belt here to help clear the remainder of this section, so that we can then start to stagger these belts down here as well once the front bits are cleared. This belt is now just kind of in position now that it's empty, ready for when we do further kind of start dragging the other belts down a bit. And you can see that I've now finally activated these two rear belts as well. So they are very slowly, well the one on the end isn't moving too bad, but this one here is very, very slow in unloading. But we are now taking from this final section here. I've already put a belt here in position, ready to start taking from that section there. So once this starts to clear out, we'll transfer one of these two belts into this space here, so that we can transfer through to that section there. It's all starting to come together very, very nicely. Now in terms of income, you can see I've got the biogas plant highlighted here. Yesterday when we tried to do the sale, or last week on the video, we ended up making 354,000 before we kind of cancelled the sell-off. So far we've made over 500,000, and you can see it's still going up. And in terms of our price, it's still fixed at 274, so we're making a substantially large amount of cash here. We are now approaching midnight. It's dark, as you can see. I'm having to use some torchlight to see what I'm doing, and I've got vehicle spotlights on to provide some extra illumination in certain parts as well. I am going to grab probably the spotlight trailer in a moment and get that switched on somewhere. But all I'm trying to do is keep everything ticking over quite nicely, and it seems to be working. So I've got that belt feeding again. I'm just basically running through and just checking that they are all doing what they're supposed to be doing. It seems to be holding up quite well, and I have been using our little Profi cleaner here quite effectively as well. Just by the by, because I don't think I actually mentioned this last week, this actually makes an excellent snowplow as well. It's a pretty slow moving vehicle. You kind of need to run it around about 2 to maybe 3 miles an hour. But if you have multiple layers of snow, this thing will completely eradicate them, and it will just keep going. You don't need to empty it. It'll just keep eating and eating and mulching the snow. So very, very effective as a slow moving snowplow. Great for clearing your yard, probably not so much for roads, but because it's so slow moving, but very, very good for clearing out your yards if you have a lot of snow in seasons. Oh, this belt has stopped. Not quite sure why it stopped, but there we go, keeping that running. So yeah, I'm just checking in with these belts on a regular basis, making sure that they are doing their job, and just speeding up time when I need to clear out the shredder. But we still have a lot of silage to go, and I don't think I'm going to get it all done in this episode, but I'll do as much as I can. And it may well be now that you probably won't see me until very near the end of the sell-off, so it's going to be into into the next day, I think, before you see me again. It just depends how long it takes for us to actually clear this out. But I'm going to shoot off again, and I'll catch up with you at some point soon. So I've been working all through the night, as you can see, and I've added a second belt. I'm trying to speed the operation up a little bit if I can, simply because we are now reaching the point where price is starting to drop, and I've sold a huge amount of silage. As you can see, we've already cleared out the first bunker pretty much entirely, so I've made a bit of changes to the belt system to try and keep everything running reasonably smoothly. So I've got various different pickup points trying to activate over here. They don't always work perfectly. It is quite temperamental. I've never tried to sell this many bunkers at once before, so this is something of an experiment that isn't quite panning out the way I'd hoped, and it's requiring a little bit more man management than I was initially expecting, but I am making decent kind of headway with it, getting kind of an understanding of it. I have my backup supply here. Still, that's starting to run a little bit low, and it is actually taking dominance on the belt, so I need to perhaps move this off for a little while. Try and let this system here take over. I've got a couple of extra belts down here. I've bought a few extra belts. I've actually gone out and bought some more and then brought them over, which is why obviously I've got the second conveyor system up and running over here. I thought if I could attack the bunkers from two different angles, it might make things a little bit easier. In case one system goes down, I've got a backup running elsewhere. So as you can see, I'm currently attacking this bunker here by dropping and then picking up and plonking on there, and then in here something similar. So picking up with that belt, picking up with that one, and then onto the belt and feeding in that way. We're up to 1.7 million almost. If we look at the income tab here, you can see that yesterday before midnight the sale was 705,000, combined with the 355 that we sold previously. You put those two together and we're talking over 1 million. And then again today we've sold over 327,000, and that's still going up and it's still going on. So we are definitely processing it, but I think there's going to come a point where we're going to run out of a good price, and we might have to save the rest of the silage for another day. I'm thinking 250 is going to be my drop-off point. When I hit 250 on the market price, that's probably when I'm going to pull the plug. So still a little bit more to go, a little bit more time to go. You can see the belts have just slowed down. That means we've run out of capacity. Speed them back up again. Hopefully that doesn't break anything. Of course it probably will. Yeah, all the belts have stopped. So I need to kind of reposition them a little bit. And this is basically what I've been doing non-stop. It's just repositioning the belts and restarting them when they keep breaking. Trying to keep this flow of silage running. And for the most part it has worked, but it is a little temperamental, as you can see. Sometimes they just stop for no apparent reason and won't start again. It's like they're not quite in the right position, so they just go, no, I do not want to dump on this particular spot, so I'm going to stop. It's really frustrating. There has to be an easier method. I'm still convinced that the conveyor system is the right way to go, and the proof is kind of in the pudding, in the sense of how much money we've made and the fact that we're still making that money at one price. But there you can see the belt there, look, that's stopped completely because the flow from these ones stopped. This is why I've been using a backup at the back there, backup pile, in case that did happen. But I just deactivated that, and now it's proving problematic, so I might have to restart that again. So I'm thinking maybe instead of trying to pull across this way, I've got a new idea. Yeah, stop that one dumping. Maybe I need to do a transfer like this. Work to this section here. Let's restart this just in case something goes wrong again. There we go. And just basically conveyor everything along this way. By using these smaller ramps, they're a little bit more controllable, they're a little bit more maneuverable. I don't have to have picture perfect positioning, because I can dump onto the ground and then the next belt can pick it up, and then so on and so forth. So I can get away with some quite interesting kind of, design styles in terms of where the belts are placed. Like this, for example, this belt will unload here, that one behind will pick it up and then dump, and then that one behind will pick it up and dump, and then a repositioning of that final belt on the end there will get that one working as well. So that means I can attack this bunker from the back here. I kind of want to get this one cleared out first though, and leave what's left of this one. So this is the bunker that we're going to try and wipe out next. Although we have still got stuff in here. I should probably work on clearing this one out first. Like I say, it is just a bit of a shame that it is quite temperamental. It'd be nice if we had variable speed belts, so that they would keep running but at a slower rate rather than just stopping constantly and having to be restarted. That does kind of put a kink in the plan. So we can attack that pile from that side there. I have still been keeping this system running where it's trying to pull through the walls, and it kind of works, but the problem is if you're going to do it like that and you have all these different points, there reaches a slowdown point in the feed. It just doesn't pull through fast enough. So you have to kind of knock it on the head. You would need multiple belts or multiple feed out belts down here, because this belt can only transport so much at a time, and if you have too many points all feeding onto it, then those feed on points start to stutter and eventually just stop. You can see this one here, it's about to stop. So I'm going to have to come and restart that one in a moment. Let me check on my other belts again. Still working over here. Still working over here, so this is good. But yeah, still a lot of silage to go. Price is still starting to come down very slowly. Down to 271 now. As I say, when it gets to 250 I'm going to stop. So I'm going to keep pushing on as long as I can and see just how much we can sell before that happens. So I've repositioned the exit belts, as you can see, to stop tipping. We have now stopped selling our silage, and the price has plummeted by $100. It was $251 when I stopped the belts. It's now $151. That's the impact of obviously the amount of silage that we sold. We've still got a fair amount left, as you can see. We've got about 2/3 of this bunker here, if not more. We've got a little under half a bunker here, and we've still got this little bit here as well. So we've still got a fair amount of silage left to shift, but we'll do that another time. And I'll probably, because we've now done silage for 2 episodes in a row, I'll probably do this off camera as well. But our crops are now ready to be harvested. While we've been doing this, our crops have reached the first of their harvestable stages. So next time out, we will attack those fields and we will do some harvesting. As you can see, we have 2 fields of soybean, which are hopefully going to raise a nice amount of cash, and we also have some sugar beets as well. If we look at the price actually of of soybean, we can see we do have a 962 price and climbing at Small Farm. It's not fantastic, but if it ends up around 1100, that's going to be an extremely good price, for a hard farm. So we'll keep an eye on that. So there we go. Yeah, that's the end of another episode. Thanks for watching. I am Jim Bob, and we'll be back same time next week with another episode of Big Bud Farm.